No more gossip
No more
about
gossip.
horses.
All right, welcome. This is the very first Outside in Music. What do we call it? Happy hour. We're
Happy
here
hour.
with some really great
Cheers.
musicians. We've got Chris Madsen from Chicago. We've got Peter Anderson and Will Anderson from New York. So why don't you guys just take a few seconds to introduce yourselves, and then we'll kind of try to chat about what you're up to in this super fun time we're in here.
Yeah, okay. Well, hey, everybody. I'm Chris Madsen. I'm a saxophone player, and I live in Chicago, the Chicago area. And I grew up here and spent some time in New York. I went to grad school out there with the illustrious Anderson twins. Roughly, we coincided roughly around the same time. And then I moved back in 2006, and since, and I just released my first album on Outside In back in first of 2019. It's an album of all original music, and yeah, we're just kind of trying to make the best of this rather situation that we're all in here. So, but I'm happy to be here with all of you.
Cool. My name is Will Anderson. I live in New York City. I'm originally from the DC area, and I went through the Juilliard jazz program with Nick Finzer, my brother, and Chris Madsen, and my brother set to release our first album on Outside in May. That's a quintet album with mostly original music, and so we might talk about that a little bit and just talk about, we've got a lot of other projects coming up, hopefully most of which are not canceled. But I'm trying to make the most of my quarantine time by just shedding and arranging and composing, that kind of thing.
Nice. Peter?
Sure, yeah. Peter Anderson here. Also, my brother and I are really excited to release this new album with Jimmy Cobb next month. And I think we're in a strange time where a lot of our live performances are canceled, but in a strange way, I think it could be good because a lot of these efforts to get on the social media, teach lessons online, I think these mediums are going to be boosted by this situation that we're in now. I mean, they were already increasing, online lessons, Spotify, YouTube channels. All these things are great mediums to get our art out there, and then going to be boosted by the situation we're in now.
For sure. And Alan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I'm Alan Blanchard. I work at Outside In Music with Nick, and I'm in Nashville now. I went through Florida State, not Juilliard, like everyone else in the call, evidently. In trumpet, but working at the label for a couple of weeks now. And, thing everyone else, staying inside, washing your hands. Tons of gigs raining in as we all know, but we're here hanging.
Cool. Well, it's good, by the way, to finally match a name with a face, because we've been emailing a lot, Alan.
yeah, it's all
face. Actually, my brother and I were scheduled to be in Nashville performing in a couple of days.
Are you guys still coming through?
No, yeah, it got canceled. Yeah, it was actually gonna be on, what was it, Thursday or Friday?
And you were supposed to be there the same night as us, and that.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Next Saturday or something? Next Friday?
Yeah. So.
Oh, yeah, it's canceled.
Yeah, we were going to come by your gig. That would have been fun. But
where were you guys going to be playing? Do you remember?
What's the name of the venue? It was
we're playing at the First Presbyterian Church in Nashville.
Okay.
Nice. And I imagine you guys had more stuff that maybe got canceled. You were supposed to go on. You guys do a lot of touring with U2 plus a guitarist, right?
Yeah, we had a whole bunch of stuff. We were about to leave for Arizona for like a 5-gig trip to Phoenix and Sedona and Tucson, and night before we were about to leave, they made the travel restrictions for Europe, so they cut all flights to Europe. So I was just thinking, what if we get out to Arizona and while we're there, our gigs get canceled and stuff. So we made the hard decision to not leave and just stay in New York. And, lo and behold, the next day, all of the venues we were supposed to play at canceled our performances. So it was kind of like a decision we had to make up front, but it was the right decision. And then, yeah, we've had stuff in Texas and California coming up next month that all got canceled. So.
Wow. Yeah, I was with Lucas Pino. We were in Reno, and the gig hadn't been canceled yet, and we were like, we got to get out of here because they just were canceling all the flights, and we are just like, I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to get stuck in Nevada, and not be able to get out of here. But what about you, Chris? What's been coming up that had to get rescheduled?
No, man. I don't do a ton of touring. I mainly stay in the Chicagoland area, and I have a college teaching gig, and so I do a bunch of educational in jazz season, I guess. I don't know. I'm assuming it's probably like that around the country, but at least here in Chicagoland, this is when a lot of the like the high school invitational festivals and collegiate invitationals happen. Basically, January through March, and those are some of them were already in the bag, but some of them got canned, and I've had a lot of local things kind of fall through. It's really a drag, but I do have my my college teaching gig. I teach at the University of Illinois at Chicago. That's my main teaching that I do, and then I also teach up in Wisconsin because I live pretty close to the Wisconsin border. So I teach at UW Parkside, which is in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Actually, Russ Johnson, who's this monster trumpeter, some of you guys, he used to live in New York. I'm sure some of you guys know him. He directs the program there, and so I teach up there with him. And we're now just switching. Everything is online, and we're technically on spring break right now, and I think all the classes are going to be remotely held after spring break. We're using Zoom, or we're using Blackboard or whatever else comes up. But yeah, it's just really kind of a drag. But I think I keep thinking to myself that everyone's going to from this quarantine being just absolute monsters. We're all have been practicing so much that will just everyone's just going to be cutting each other left and right. The scene is going to be just insanely competitive by the time we get out, because we'll all be that much better at our instruments. At least that's what I hope. Because I know that I've been shedding more than usual. Obviously, plenty of time now. But it's just kind of the way it is. Just trying to deal with it the best I can.
That makes sense. So what are you shedding? What are you working on? We're gonna steal all your ideas.
Oh. Well, actually, something I did want to talk about, something that I can still maintain during this quarantine, is the social media stuff that I personally that I've sort of started. For over the past maybe 18 months or so, I had this series that I do called Alternate Jazz History, where I sort of I pair an unlikely historical pairing of a certain saxophonist with a unexpected repertoire that they would never have actually been able to play before, and something that I've always kind of felt like I've been able to do musical impersonations pretty well. That's always been something that came relatively easy. And so I'm able to sort of, try to inhabit the spirit of another saxophone player. And like the first one I did was Don Bias plays giant steps, that kind of thing. Like you would never hear that, but this is maybe something, this is my take on what it might have sounded like if he was able to do that. So I've been working overtime on those. I actually took a few months off just because it's very time consuming to put that stuff together, and I have to sort of veer off my practice regimen to sort of learn another person's style pretty intimately.
Right.
But I've been able to sort of veer. I've been able to just kind of get back into that. So I'm working on one right now, which is it's just a social media thing that it's free and I don't have to leave the house for it. So it's like it's perfect for the quarantine.
Yeah, no, I've seen a bunch.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate
Are
it.
you? So are you like? Do you have another one on the docket that you want to give a hint about?
Are you asking me to make news right now?
Yeah, this is going to be on BuzzFeed tomorrow morning.
Okay, thanks for the heads up. I can't. No, I can't let it out of the bag too soon. I'm working on one that's trading fours right now. So
cool.
We've got one person trading fours with another person, and I'm going to splice them together and just over a blues, you know. So I'm sort of trying to take on two different people at once right now.
So let me guess. Is that the Peter Anderson and Will Anderson?
Wow, look at the time. I gotta go, guys. Yeah.
Wait, so if you don't mind me asking, like, how are you gonna splice it together?
Oh, I don't have any fancy editing or anything. I just use like iMovie, you know, the software that comes on the Mac. And so I'll take. I've already done one of them. I'll take a movie of one, and then just kind of take another one. And I think iMovie make it pretty easy for you to splice stuff together,
right?
Up to a certain point, just whatever is free.
So it's gonna be like you playing the whole time.
Yeah, me playing, but different camera angles where I'm on the left and then I'm on the right, and then the names of the.
Man, that's cool.
Back and forth, yeah. I'm trying, man. It's hard. It's a really tough project because we all want to work on our own individual sounds. You know, like that's the whole point, really, of playing jazz. But this little side project has got me trying to sort of go back to when I was transcribing a bunch. You know, like in college and in grad school, and trying to get back into those sonic worlds of those players that I haven't really inhabited in a long time. So it's tough, but it seems to get a pretty positive reaction, and people seem to like it and think it's funny and interesting. So I'll definitely keep doing that as long as we're stuck in the house.
I've seen all of those videos on Facebook, but do you put them on other mediums like YouTube or Vimeo or any of those?
I do put them on YouTube. I mean, I don't really worry too much about my follower count on YouTube. I don't know how all of you guys are, if your YouTube account is sort of something that you really try to maintain, but I'd rather have an active follower base on Instagram and Facebook. I'd rather those be a little, it just seems, I don't know, the medium for those just seems a little bit more immediate for whatever reason, but yeah, I do. I put them all up on YouTube so that you can always go and check them out up there. So yeah, alternate jazz history. It's a hashtag. You can use that hashtag if you want to check them out.
And how many have you made?
I think I just made my 10th one.
Cool.
What's your favorite one?
Say?
Oh, I just said, which one is your favorite?
Oh, oh man, that's tough. I dislike them all equally.
Did you actually hit the dislike button on?
Of course, yes, of course. No, I don't know, man. I guess the last one I did was pretty fun because I had taken so many. I'd taken like 4 or 5 months off from it, and I did Coleman Hawkins plays "Singing a Song of Song" with Kenny Garrett singing a song of song.
Oh man, I gotta go watch that.
And yeah, it's funny, man. I don't know how accurate it is, but I do my best on them. So that's probably that one because it feels the freshest to me. Is probably, but I think going to be my favorite because it's taken 2 people and putting them together, and that's something I haven't done before. So I spent last week studying this one person, and then this next week I'll be working on this other person and trying to. Yeah, it's really, I don't know why I do it, but it's just for the hell of it.
Do you use it with your students at all, or is it?
Yeah, it's not like I have them check those things out or anything. I just, when for transcription, as I'm sure with all the cases with all of you guys, transcription is such an important part of teaching, cornerstone of right? Learning style and So I try to let them know certain things that I do to inhabit the musical personality of other people. But yeah, I would never force my students to watch those things. If they find them, they find them, and more power to them. But I'm not gonna ask them to check them out or anything like that.
Right.
With your students, how much are you doing? Like you're picking their transcriptions versus letting them pick it? Because I feel like it's so often they just want to pick the latest thing they've heard.
Yeah, exactly. Because a student, it all depends on the student. Some need more guidance, and they need you to tell them you should really be transcribing person X. But other kids will come in with they've got a person that they want to get to, and I welcome that. If they really want to study a certain person, that's great. And it's even better if that person is someone I've never transcribed, because then we can kind of learn together. Cool. But did you guys all use that in your lessons too? Transcribing, is that kind of a big part of what you guys do?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, some of my students just don't necessarily have the work ethic, so a lot of times I'll just write it out for them, which is not ideal. But yeah, I think ideally, I'd like all my students to be transcribing and learning by memory. But I find that not everyone has quite the work ethic to do that.
Yeah, it takes
I'm
a
sure
long
you
time
do
at the
a lot of
beginning.
that, Nick, in your lessons.
Yeah, we do that. Last semester, I had them do basically try to do half of what Chris is doing, just like be able to impersonate the person. Like we checked out, I had them pick whoever, whichever trombone player they wanted to check out, and I said, all right, the goal at the end of the semester is you're gonna play a blues like that person. So it was like trying to go really deep. Sometimes I find that we go a little too wide. Sometimes, like feeling like you got to check out this, and they don't always get super into like a few people really deep. So that was kind of a experiment, and it seemed to work pretty well actually. So I think I might keep doing it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it can be tough. There's like someone that just got out of school. If one combo playing the music of Wayne Shorter, and then somewhere else you're trying to study playing a Clifford Brown, and then somewhere else trying to study the history of pops, it's like, how do you get a chance to actually do something, rather than try and do everything? So I don't know. I mean, I'm there with, but
I agree. I totally agree. I think when we were in school together, Nick and Chris, there was a pressure to kind of be able to do everything, and it's like, well, you have to know Louis Armstrong, or you can't know all the modern stuff. But I sincerely think that the most successful players really just focused on a few things, or I mean, of course it's important to know as much as you can over a broad period of time, but if you can't do everything, that's a bad thing. And you want to be a master of a certain thing, not like a jack of all trades. So I think that's saying, Chris, like if you have a student that comes to you and they want to learn a certain player, let them do that instead of imposing your philosophy on what they do.
Absolutely.
So how does that tie into how you guys have done your last so many years of touring, where you've done like a trio, and you guys have found like a way to really keep yourselves busy through specializing?
Yeah, well, I guess the cool thing about our trio is it's just like such an unusual instrumentation, that like no matter what we do, it's kind of like new in a way. Because like very often like the sax or the clarinet has to take a different role in the group. You have to like play a bass line or play harmonies or something like that. So in a certain way, I think it gives it like a freshness compared to like a piano trio. But it doesn't have your group doesn't have to be a unique instrumentation to get a unique sound. I'm not saying that, but I think in a way it does help.
How do you think about that, Chris, in terms of the projects that you put together? or don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do like that. I just played one of my. I think maybe my last gig before this quarantine was myself, and it's actually really similar to the Anderson twins trio. It was me and a guitarist and a vocalist, and it's the same deal, right? It's like two voices and then a chordal instrument.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I love doing that. I love varying up the instrumentation and doing all different kinds of gigs with standard groups and then groups like that where you're really forced to be on your toes. Yeah, there's, I just to kind of tie it into what I was talking about before, I would sort of channel certain players in that atmosphere, right? Like I would never bust out my Michael Brecker licks in that capacity. It's just like they wouldn't really work in that, you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel right. And so I feel like the more people you have in the more musicians that you have in your belt from having studied as much as possible can sort of adapt to those different situations that much more. So I really feel like doing that work on the front end helps prepare you. Contrary to what it might seem like, I feel like the more you transcribe and the more you're able to do impersonations of other people, the easier it is to separate your own voice from the rest of the crowd. You know what I mean? And really come to your own sound that way. But at the same time, Pete, what you were saying is totally valid about a lot of the people that we revere basically studied like one or two cats, and but really, really got deep into that and found their own sound out of those players. I mean, look at Train. He had probably a handful of players that he really admired, and a lot of them were his contemporaries. But geez, man, he came up with.
Yeah.
He came up with one of the most original concepts in the history of the music. So it's incredible.
Yeah, but I always say, because he grew up with Train in Philly. He said that Train sounded exactly like Johnny Hodges when he was young.
Oh wow,
that's wild, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before I forget, I just wanted to mention. So Chris just mentioned Michael Brecker, so I'm calling it now. Michael Brecker is going to be the subject of the next alternate jazz history.
Well, you'll just have to tune in and see one, dude.
I'm just going to have to tune in.
That's the only way.
Like whether I'm right or not, I'm kind of building the hype about it. So, you can thank me later.
I can use all the hype I can get. I'll take it all. So thank you for that.
Exactly.
No, I think it's a good point with the transcriptions, but I think something I always forgot, is there's like that feeling like if you don't finish a transcription, like you failed, but breaking it down, like, recognizing that regardless if you don't want to mimic that, it's like, it's our like orchestral excerpts or whatnot, like that's like a technique and ear training, and like there's so much more to it than just like, oh, I want to be Clifford Brown, and there's nothing wrong if you want to be Clifford Brown or whatnot. I'm like John Faddis, like wanted to be Dizzy Gillespie. That's his thing. But like the ear training and like the facility that you just get from doing that, because obviously they're better than you, is incredible. So I don't think students should feel like they're afraid they're going to sound too much like somebody, or they're going to they didn't succeed if they didn't get all 20 choruses of Freddie Hubbard playing a blues.
For sure. So, Chris, let's circle back here and talk about your record. I know it came out in November. But tell us a little bit about it. Who played on it, and what's happening?
It was all Chicago rhythm section. Dana Hall and Clark Summers and Stu Mindeman, and those guys. Their resumes speak for themselves. They're some of the most in-demand players, not just in Chicago, but just all over the world. And I was really, really lucky to be able to have them play on it, and not only to record, but also to play a handful of gigs before we even started. Before we even stepped in the studio, so that we were pretty much prepared for it. And I it had been a long time since I recorded an album of all my original stuff, and I really wanted to do that again and sort of get back onto that track. And so I just asked those guys if they'd be willing to do it, and they all were super down with it, and they learned my music, to a degree that I never thought was possible. And yeah, it's just fantastic. I love it. In Chicago, we're known here for a variety of different things. I think the AACM kind of experimental jazz thing is very tied in with the scene here. But I think it's also that don't necessarily reference that, just because Chicago is such a it's huge. It's a huge, varied scene. There's if not 1,000 plus jazz musicians trying to all kind of do similar things, and they all have their own styles and voices. And I just think being able to provide to sort of add to the conversation with original music that is not necessarily venturing on the free jazz thing is important, because people need to see that we're doing other things other than that. Yeah, there's plenty of experimental free jazz happening here, but there's a huge amount of people. There's an entire scene of people that are not really doing that necessarily. And this was kind of my offering for that, I guess. But yeah, it was all original stuff, and we had a couple rehearsals before our first gig, and man, it came together so well. And these guys are just I can't say enough about the rhythm section. They're just absolutely incredible, and it was really thrilling, as you guys all know, to have your original music played and be given the care that you want it to be given. It's you're just in debt to those people for the rest of your life, for them for putting the time in and doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we had a CD release on November 1st at a club here in Chicago called Constellation, and it went really well. And we played at the Chicago Jazz Festival. I actually did a little sort of preview release, like a pre-release, early release there. I had a couple copies available for sale for certain people that were there at the Chicago Jazz Fest. That was back in September, I think. Yeah, it's great. I love the scene here. It's really cool, and I do feel like Chicago is getting a little bit more attention. You get artists like Greg Ward, Micaiah McCraven, those kind of people who are really kind of Chicago natives, and they're taking sort of more of a center stage in the national scene. And I think it's great. I think it's sort of hipping people to the wide variety of great music that we have here, and I'm happy to play my whatever part I can in that. Really.
So I haven't heard the record yet, but just want like inspirations for your compositions.
Oh yeah,
like particular composers that you like.
Yeah, definitely. I think like when I sit down to write just a tune, a framework for a tune, I'm really inspired by, especially probably my number one influence for that. He always has been. I've always been fascinated by his ability to even work in a trio setting and just make it so through composed and very, very involved. He writes so much density at the piano that I could never approach that on the writing. My limited piano skills could never approach that. But the way that he's able to orchestrate in a small group is extremely interesting to me. And he might be my favorite jazz composer of all time. Just in the creativity that he brought and the unique sounds that he had. So probably, yeah, Chick. And then, just obviously I'm a huge Wayne fan in every regard, and he's a huge influence. And, we all kind of share the same influences in that. But yeah, there's something special. In fact, one of the single that we did that was released a couple of weeks before actually arranged that. I wrote it, and it was a composition, not just an arrangement, but it was based on a chick tune that was very, very involved, and I kind of took Chick's tune, and then did like the intro is this long, and then the next part and the next part, and it's just like a chamber music piece. All the different parts that it goes through. It's really incredible. So yeah, hats off to Chick, for being for being such an incredible creative force. He's probably my main influence as far as writing goes. When I step back and really look at it.
Cool.
Nice. And so, what I'm curious, I know you spent a lot of time in New York. What kind of made you go back to Chicago after spent all the Juilliard time?
Yeah, so I was in New York for about 3 years, a little over 3 years, and I originally moved out there just to go to grad school at Juilliard, and I kind of figured that I would be living there for a while after that. And I did. I spent a full year there after I was done with school, but it was just kind of New York is just not. This wasn't really for me. It just the scene was great. I love the music. I love the musicians and meeting all you guys and playing with the greatest musicians in the world. Honestly, it was fantastic. But I just couldn't really hang with the day-to-day living that New York requires of you. And I'm sure you guys can relate to that to some degree. I mean, it's just like you don't have the conveniences that you have in certain other, even urban centers. It just wasn't really for me. It was really, it caused me a lot of anxiety to just kind of go through the motions of living in New York and putting up with all the tougher parts. Really started to grate on me after a while. And it's just to a point where I just didn't feel like it was worth it anymore. And also, I knew that my wife and I we wanted to have kids eventually, and nothing wrong with raising kids in New York. I think that's a fantastic thing. And some of the if you raise a kid in New York, your kid is going to be exposed to some of the most intellectually stimulating stuff you can get to. But I wanted a little bit more space. I wanted so we could have a little bit more space, and stuff like that. And so I grew up in a place in Chicago suburbs that was very amenable to that. So I figured that would be a good place to go. So yeah, it was basically just New York City itself, and the sort of the culture of living there was a little bit too stressful for me. I just couldn't really handle it. It's some people really thrive on that and they eat it up, but for me it was just kind of not really my scene, I guess.
No, that's cool. I think it's just important to put out there that there's multiple places and scenes, and there's a lot of people that are going to school for jazz now that may not end up in New York, and so it's just good for I think it's good for people to have the reality that there are multiple places to be a creative jazz musician and do your thing.
Absolutely, I think that's very true.
So, and Pete and Will, you guys have a record coming out soon, May, right? So could you give us the scoop about the new record?
Yeah. So the band is a quintet. It's my brother and I on alto and tenor saxes. Jed Patton on the piano, Dave Wong on the bass, and we've been working with the two of them for a long time. They've actually been on a prior record before, and they play a lot of gigs with us. They're just knowledgeable about a lot of different styles, and they kind of bring it all to the table. And we've been wanting for years to record with Jimmy Cobb, so it all just came together, and we've played a couple concerts with him and a couple gigs, and other than his reputation, he's just like the sweetest guy to work with, and he's always, even though he's one of the most famous drummers in jazz, he's like really just an amazing side man. He's always looking to what he can bring to the table and how he can make everything come together great. So just working with him in the studio was awesome. And we actually didn't even rehearse the material with him. We ran through the tunes a couple times, but we didn't want him to be reading or anything. We really wanted him to just be kind of interacting and using his instincts, and he did amazingly. So it was a really cool experience in the studio. So it's mostly original music, but it's a couple standards as well.
Nice. So I don't like that seems so intimidating to me to like ask Jimmy Cobb to play on my record. Like, what was the story there? How did you make it that happen?
Well, we originally met him. There's a guitar player named Ilya Lushtak who's been kind of tight with Jimmy for a while, and so we started hearing Jimmy play with Ilya, and we started kind of sitting in. So we got to know Jimmy, and he kind of gained a trust in us, and he seemed to like us and like playing, and yeah, faith because he doesn't record with everyone. So we weren't sure if he'd record with us because we've definitely asked other jazz luminaries to record with us who've said no. Even it's not about the money. Like some great musicians just are very picky about recording. Is even like one of our heroes, Barry Harris. He's just kind of decided that he doesn't want to record anymore because he feels like he's getting kind of too frail, even though he can play great. But so it was definitely a leap of faith, but it was well worth it, and we're really happy with the result. So, but I'll speak for myself. I don't know if Pete feels the same way.
I guess not.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, we were really lucky with everything, with how everything came together. Yeah, and Jimmy sounds incredible on the record. We're just so lucky that he could join us for the session. And yeah, I mean, besides the product, it was just a great experience to work with someone like that and to see how they learn the music, how they approach putting it together. And yeah, like my brother said, even though he's got an incredible reputation, he was there to serve our project and bring to the table what he had and not sort of like impose like his style or what he wanted to do with it. It was about like what we wanted for the music, which is an important lesson to young students who are coming up. It's like sometimes you're in the position of doing your own project, but many other times you're not, and you have to adapt and play the way someone else wants you for their project. You have to be able to do both things.
Totally, that's cool. What was there anything that you took away that you could describe, like how he handled the situation differently than other people you observe?
Oh man, well, I mean, first of all, just his stamina. I mean, it was a 6-hour session, and he was like, he didn't even need like a lunch break. So, just like very kind of like humble and never asking for special favors or anything like that.
Wow.
And not really like picky about the takes and that kind of thing. But he definitely holds himself to a high standard. So there's several times when we'd be doing a take and he would stop the take and say like, I'm sorry, I didn't feel like I did that well. Let's do it again. So he was honest, and he did take it. We've also recorded with Tootie Heath, who is also a joy to record with, and Kenny Washington, and both of those guys too like acted extremely professionally. So Jimmy Cobb was no different, and he's well into his 90s now. So
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So before I let you all go, can we go around one more time? And I want to know two things. One is, where's the best place for people to get your music from? Where do you want people to go to grab your record, either new or old? And second, what's your like big quarantine project? What are we going to see from you by the end? I think Chris, we already kind of know, but
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. So that's we've already kind of gone over my quarantine project there. There's this other there's the drummer in Chicago who's actually a transplant from New York from years ago, named Eric Binder, and he has a lot of really interesting ideas about putting putting stuff together online, and we did this thing. I think he started a hashtag called he lays down a drum track, and then the idea is to sort of you play along with the drum track, and then he adds it to his track and the quartet or whatever. And so we did something on Stablemates a couple days ago, and that was pretty cool. And I think he's sort of feeling it out, and he's trying to put together a band where everyone records their individual tracks, and then he kind of puts them all together. So I don't know how he's going to do it. It sounds very cool. So I'm going to try to get involved with that. And as far as the music goes, to be honest with you, I'm very negligent on my personal website. I just don't update it very often, and partially just I feel like, although websites are still important, I almost feel like they're going to go the way of the physical CD eventually. Where it's like people don't really consume your music through that media necessarily.
Sure.
So I'm much more to get my music through Facebook or Instagram. Cool. I'm much more active on those platforms and try to get music up on there. My website still has the information on it, chrismadsen.net. But I would probably rather see people, find my stuff on social media.
Great.
Cool. Yeah. Well, as far as our music, I mean, you can go to iTunes. You can also go to CD Baby for both download and ordering the CD, the physical CD. As far as this, period that we're in with the quarantine, Will and I are going to record a bunch of like promotional videos with an editor, both quintet and trio, to try to get those out there. I think more and more videos are really important in this day and age, both for consumers because they want to see you play, but also just like for promotion, for booking concerts and this type of thing. So that's really what we're going to work on during this quarantine period for sure.
Nice. Anything else, Will?
Yeah, well, I think also our website's got like all of our albums listed, and it's got a link where you can buy it, download it, or buy it, and it'll also be linked on the Outside In website. Another project my brother and I are working on now is getting together a show that's going to be called The Journey of Jazz, and kind of go through 100 years of jazz. So we're going to be arranging music for that and choosing repertoire. So that's what we're working on as well. So.
Nice. When's that show? Not for a couple months, I guess.
It's going to be in August.
Nice.
So hopefully all this will be done by then. So we'll see.
We hope so. Well, the pre-order for the new record should be out sometime mid-April, usually a month before. So people, if you're listening to this after the fact, it might be time to pre-order Peter and Will's new album. But thank you all so much for taking some time to chat. I'm glad we could connect, and I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and we'll be in touch again soon.
All right.
All right, have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks for all your help. See you guys later.
All right.
All right.